Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's Free Library of Philadelphia Foundation author event. It is wonderful to see you all here. It's been an incredible season so far, complete with historians and artists and novelists and a Supreme Court justice. Who was here for Justice Sotomayor? That was quite an event, wasn't it? But we still have a couple of events left, including this Thursday with Trey Johnson, and we'll cap off the season with our rescheduled event with Congressman Jim Clyburn on December 14th. You can register for all our events at our webpage, freelibraryfoundation.org. Let me just say a few quick words about our organization in general. The foundation works together with the Free Library to support programming and advance its mission of promoting literacy throughout the Philadelphia region. Of course, as a nonprofit, we are reliant upon your support to help us achieve these goals, so please do consider donating, which you can also do through our website. Again, that's freelibraryfoundation.org. Before we get started, there are a few people and organizations I'd like to thank. I'd like to thank Uncle Bobby's, our partner bookseller. You would have seen them upstairs in the lobby. And the Philadelphia Citizen, our wonderful media partner. Tonight, we welcome Jonathan Karl, who is the chief Washington correspondent for ABC News and co-anchor of This Week with George Stephanopoulos. Karl has covered every major beat in Washington, D.C., including the White House, Capitol Hill, the Pentagon, and the State Department. He has reported from the White House under 4 presidents and 14 press secretaries, and counting. He is a former president of the White House Correspondents Association, and he's the author of Front Row at the Trump Show, Betrayal, and Tired of Winning, which were all instant New York Times bestsellers. Tonight, he will be speaking with us about his new book, Retribution, which offers a carefully reported account of a pivotal campaign season, documenting events and conversations that shaped the course of American history. He will be joined in conversation by Tamala Edwards, who is the co-anchor of Action News at 10 a.m. and is a regular co-host of Inside Story, conducting probing interviews with newsmakers like Governor Tom Corbett, Senator Bob Casey, Mayor Michael Nutter, and others, as well as moderating many election debates. Prior to joining 6ABC in 2005, Tamala Edwards was the anchor of ABC's World News Now and World News This Morning. Folks, this promises to be an important and illuminating conversation. Please join me in welcoming Jonathan Karl and Tamala Edwards.
Good evening, good evening. Can everybody hear me? Yep. Good. I guess this is technically kind of work, but it doesn't feel like work. I get to be with you guys, and I get to be with an old friend who is always
so great to
fun.
be here with you. It's so cool. We go way, way back.
We were babies.
Yes.
We were babies. Not so much now, but we won't tell you by how much. John, this is your 4th Trump book. We've talked about 2 of the other ones, I know.
Yeah.
And I wanted you to put it into context when you think back on the other books to where you are in Retribution. How does it inform what you thought as you did this reporting? From front seat at the Trump show to this, What has changed?
Yeah, you have to talk a little louder.
Okay, that means my mic's not working. I'm asking him, having done 4 books, how it informs what it was like to do this reporting. What has changed, what is different, how things hit him. Can you hear me in the back? Yes. Okay, good.
First of all, let me make a confession, because I'm here with a good friend and an ABC colleague. And I love ABC. I love what ABC has given me the opportunity to do. I've been at ABC for now more than 20 years. I actually knew Tam before I was at ABC, I believe. Mm-hmm. The books are the most important work that I've ever done. This is where I've put my heart and soul into doing this. I found myself covering the campaign of 2016. I was covering the Obama White House, and I went out to cover the campaign of 2016. And then all the fury and the madness and the chaos of those first months and first years of Trump's first term. And a friend of mine who is in the publishing industry kept on trying to get me to write a book. And I was like, I don't have time to write a book. Look what we're doing. Are you crazy? And he slid we had a breakfast where he was going to make this pitch one more time. You got to do this. And he slid a piece of paper across the table with just the title, Front Row at the Trump Show. And I was like, okay. And I wrote that book thinking it would be the one and only book I would write about this. And I felt like my goal in writing that book, Tam, was to write something that 50 years from now, 100 years from now, because I think people will be looking back on this age for a long time. But somebody who had the question, what the hell was that? And what was it like, would be able to read this. So I wasn't writing a polemic. I wasn't writing an attack on Donald Trump, but a defense on Donald Trump. But what was it like to be a reporter, front row at the Trump show? Also, oddly, I was the person at the White House who had known Donald Trump longer than anybody, with the exception of his daughter, Ivanka, because I'd known him since 1994. And here I was, president of the White House Correspondents Association, chief White House correspondent for one of the big television networks, and this guy was in the White House. So I wrote that book, and then it comes out in 2020. And then 2020 happens. Pandemic, January 6th, all of that. It's like, well, I've got to do another one. I've got to document this history. Because I could see people rewriting the history as it was happening. And I was there. I want to write something that people can look back on and say, here was somebody who was there. Here is a first-hand account, well-reported, well-documented, of what was happening. And then he starts to plot the comeback. I thought it was over. By the way, the subtitle of Betrayal was the book I wrote about January 6th. The subtitle is The Final Act of the Trump Show. That didn't age very well. So I wrote my third book. So I was like, he's plotting this comeback. And as it was happening, I wanted to. And by the way, people really opened up to me who worked in that first Trump administration. And the most damning accounts of what happened invariably came from people who were closest to Donald Trump. And the most dire warnings about what would happen if he were to return to power came from people that worked closest to him in that White House. So I felt like I needed to write that book. The subtitle of that book, I was tired of winning. The subtitle was Donald Trump and the End of the Grand Old Party. So there's no ending, there's no final in this book.
It's just retribution.
It's just retribution. But I very much see these books as in dialogue with each other. I think that and in each one of them I kind of harken back to stuff that were in the earlier. And again, I've worked harder on this stuff than anything I've ever done, and we work pretty hard in the stuff we do. But this is my most important work.
So you're so close to it. Does it make sense to you, or do you ever go, this is really crazy?
I'll tell you, this campaign, because this is really, this book is largely about the presidential campaign, but about a third of it is what happened after the election, the transition, Trump's return to power, those first, the first kind of 100 days, not exhaustive of the first 100 days, but all of that. And the campaign was so insane, and Pennsylvania was ground zero. My God, you were in the middle of it. And
he made fries here.
Wow. That event was like, by the way, I started calling Trump during the campaign, something I never did before, by the way. And all the time, if I wanted to talk to him, I usually went through somebody, and he was very, very easy to get through to. But I started calling his cell phone during the campaign. Started the day right after Butler. I wanted to leave him a message, just a personal message saying that was horrific and, hope you're okay. We could try calling it later if it was.
He might enjoy that.
I mean, but I found that the best time to call him was really early in the morning or very late at night. Like, he doesn't sleep very much. Do you know he tweeted 100 or truth?
160.
160 times
Yeah.
and most of them were at like near 2 in the morning. Anyway, so I called him late one night. It was right the day after McDonald's. And he was so proud of himself. He says, a thing called McDonald's. People are saying it's the greatest event in history. I mean, I'm not saying that, but people are saying that. But does it make sense? I don't know. I mean, what I was saying is the campaign was so frenetic, and we were covering it, and we were trying to keep up with things. And what the book does is it gives me a chance to take a step back and try to think, what were the events that really mattered, that really made a difference, and how can I make sense of it? And so I think it was an attempt. Not all of it truly makes sense, no.
It's interesting, a couple of years ago, like Rupert Murdoch was calling him Florida man, wouldn't even call him by name. He was into DeSantis, he was Norma Desmond, and yet he's back in the White House. Let's walk through some of the things that you lay out in the book as being big, because sometimes it's hard to figure out, was it luck or was it talent or skill that got him to this moment? Did he just get an incredible hand of cards? One thing, there are 4 cases against him, 3 don't really go anywhere, there's not enough time. The one that does go is the Alvin Bragg case in New York.
Yeah.
34 indictments. Some might say it was the best thing that could have happened to him.
Yeah.
That it energized his base for a case that legal experts loved, but most people were like, the porn star, who cares?
Yeah.
Was that seminal to bringing him back?
It was a big part. I mean, what's fascinating, and I sketched, chapter 1 is called The Felon and the Frontrunner. And it kind of establishes, the trial in New York starts just as he has completely solidified his support over the Republican Party yet again. And in fact, to a greater degree than he had the first time around, significantly greater. So he is on top of the world. And by the way, not just has he clinched the Republican nomination and vanquished, all of his rivals to an embarrassing degree for them, he's also leading in the polls against Joe Biden. I mean, it's looking like if you were put, I don't know what the Poly Market, which is sometimes more accurate than the pollsters, had on it, but I mean, it was like the smart money was that Trump was actually going to win again. And here he is on trial in New York City. And yes, the case was, of all the transgressions and alleged transgressions of Donald Trump, this was the most trivial that had gone through the legal system. I mean, one case is pilfering the nation's most sensitive military secrets and national security secrets from the White House, stuffing them in ballroom and a bathroom in Mar-a-Lago, obstructing investigators trying to get them back, sharing the information. By the way, there's a story today that the Trump's lawyers are now trying to ensure. You remember, Jack Smith did 2 reports. It's actually 2 parts of one report. But the first one was about January 6th, and the second is about the classified documents case. And the January 6th report came out. The classified documents case was blocked by the Florida judge Eileen Cannon, who Trump, by the way, I report, considered making the Attorney General of the United States. I think she ended up being more valuable on the bench, but they're trying to make sure that report, that part of the report, never sees the light of day. I did extensive reporting on what that investigation uncovered, and I report kind of my version of this report that today we've learned they're trying to keep from ever seeing the light of day in this book. But look, pilfering classified documents, trying to overturn American democracy, these were far more significant charges than whether or not he lied in how he accounted for payments to a porn star and whether or not they should have been classified as a campaign expense. I mean, it's a very convoluted case because the hush money is not against the law. It's truly how he accounted for it. And this was the case that went to trial. Are you kidding me? So he took advantage of that. I mean, he hated every second of it. He had to go to that, and because I went to the court. I wasn't there for all of it. I mean, I didn't want to go to that courtroom every day, you know, I mean, just as a journalist. It's 100 Center Street in New York. It is a dingy, asbestos-ridden, you know, century-old building that hasn't been renovated, you know. I mean, I described when I first walked in, the first thing I noticed, and I'd been there as a reporter for the New York Post because you'd do, like, petty crime stuff that came there. But there's a big frickin' rat trap by the front door. And these must be big rats, because it was a big rat trap. I was like, what is that? Oh my God. So this is the place he had to go every day, and he was compelled. And he hated it, but he used that. You remember he gave those little press conferences to the assembled television pool, and a handful of reporters in the dingy, dark hallway, fluorescent, flickering lights. He had to kind of yell to be heard because he had to be the other side of a barricade. I mean, but he used that platform as his campaign stage. And it was entirely effective. And everybody's like, well, if he gets convicted, you know, there's no way. I mean, Americans won't vote for a felon.
In the book, you will find, in fact, I think I heard on Pod Save America, they were giving Merrick Garland a hard time.
Yeah.
John details how and why the Jack Smith cases went at the speed they did, and they could be wrong for giving Merrick Garland a hard time. Another thing you get into is the debate around Biden. And it's interesting because this year, I've had 2 conversations on this stage on different sides of the debate. One was Jake Tapper, who takes the
Another former colleague of ours.
former colleague, who takes the Dean Phillips stance that you talked to Dean Phillips in the book, who says when you would see him, he couldn't make it through meetings behind closed doors. It was clear something was wrong. That's why he ran. Karine Jean-Pierre was just here a few weeks ago. She took the Nancy Pelosi line. He seemed fine until he didn't. This is an eternal debate. Should the party have known? Did people know? Should they have done something? Where do you come down on that?
So, and I should say, this is not my 4th Trump book, because this is not really a Trump book. There's also quite a bit about Joe Biden and about Kamala Harris. It's about the campaign. And before I directly answer your question, let me just say that Joe Biden's decision to run for re-election was the most consequential decision of his life. And it was a decision that was never actually made. I mean, I detail how, I spent a lot of time talking to Hunter Biden, very interesting guy, you know, for all his faults and all all that he's gone through, all that he has done. When the critical time came, he was his father's arguably most important advisor. I mean, he talked to him every day. You know, he was not working in the White House, but he was channeling and dealing with his father and his, you know, I mean, every single day. And I asked Hunter, you know, so, you know, when did he decide that he was going to run again? He said, well, it just went. I mean, we never really had that conversation. And what's interesting is he said that when they were running in 2020, Hunter says, I assumed it was going to be for one term. We were going to, you know, do what Biden himself talked about, right? Be the bridge to the next generation. And so that was kind of the assumption. He never made the promise. He never promised it would be one term. But that was kind of the assumption. And then, you know, you get in the White House and you're either getting ready to run again or you're announcing to the world you're a lame duck. So Bruce Reed tells me on the record in this book, Bruce Reed's one of Biden's, you know, 4 closest advisors. We never had a single meeting on it. Here are the pros, here are the cons, should we run again? It was just like, we're off. So to answer your question, Jake's a very good reporter, a good friend. I view it differently than Jake Tapper. I don't think there was a cover-up of Biden's mental state. I think the world saw what they saw. David Ignatius, columnist for the Washington Post, wrote an article in September, an op-ed in September of 2023. So full year, more than a year before the election, pleading with, you know, Democrats pleading with his friend Joe Biden, don't run. You've done great but, you know, it's time to pass the torch. He was, I think the world everybody saw that he had clearly aged. He was still sharp. He was not worse behind closed doors. But there were things. I mean, it is true. I quote one of the unnamed, but a senior Biden person who said, you know, it was best if we didn't schedule meetings after 4:30. And that's not a good thing. But you know, it's not like he was senile.
You also get into Kamala Harris's run.
Yeah.
And you include a back and forth she has with my colleague, Brian Taff. And somebody says
Oh yeah,
to you,
that was an amazing interview. My God.
somebody says to you, it wasn't that she didn't have enough days, that she had too many days. That if the race had come after the convention and the debates, she would have been fine. It was that time of people asking questions and there was a lot of hemming and hawing that seemed to hurt her. And this is going to be an interesting turn. If you've watched the Spider-Man movies, there's a scene in one of the Tom Holland movies where he's trying to take down Donald Glover. And Donald Glover is attached to his car with a web. And Tom Holland is terrible at interrogating. And at the end, Donald says to Spider-Man, "You're going to have to get better at the superhero part."
Yeah.
And I thought about that in reading the Kamala part, that everything that was a criticism had been said about her going back to the 2020 campaign, to other things. She knew she had to get better at that part.
Yeah.
And you wonder how you know you want the opportunity to run, but you're not better at that part.
Yeah.
What happened there?
Well, you know, her book is called 107 Days, and what she has said is she didn't have enough time, as you alluded to, and I think that actually it's just a fact that
But she had been known for this the whole time she was in the vice president's residence.
100%. But the arc of her campaign is actually very interesting because everybody had fears and doubts. I mean, I document that Barack Obama and Nancy Pelosi really didn't want to just hand the nomination to Kamala Harris. Part of it was because they felt it would look bad if the party leaders, anoint a candidate instead of, having some kind of a process. But the other thing is they both had doubts about her as a candidate. You know, how she did in 2020 when she was running when she started her race for the nomination in 2019.
Massive crowds.
I mean, the best day of her campaign was her launch. And it was great. And she had huge crowds. She had the great resume, she had a great background, and the campaign kind of fizzled. And she dropped out before you got to 2020. But the arc of her, campaign, she had an almost flawless, 4, 5, 6 weeks after Biden drops out. Solidifies support. First, it's an inside game. The phone call she made that day, getting everybody on board. Her first events, the energy and the excitement around this. Democrats were relieved. They had a candidate who was vibrant and energetic, and she met the moment. Trump was totally thrown off. He was complaining that Biden's the nominee. They can't steal it from him. He wanted him back. He actually, I don't know if you remember this, but she had events that were getting big crowds, and Biden had never gotten big crowds. And these were bigger than any crowds that he had gotten. And at one point, he accuses her of using AI to make up the audiences, the crowds. And he doesn't give it up. It's like on and on and on. This is AI. It needs to be prosecuted. This election rigging. So you know that he was upset. And he goes into the Democratic convention. And I've been at a bunch of Democratic conventions. I thought, my opinion, it was the best Democratic convention that I'd attended. Totally unified, lots of energy. They incorporated Republicans and it was all this pageantry of patriotism and the flag and taking that mantle back or trying to from Republicans. Then she has the debate, our debate, right here, Philadelphia. I mean, really solid debate performance. She doesn't talk about people eating cats and dogs. I mean, and then it goes down. What happened? I mean, I think that one of the things is that she was always too cautious. So this goes way back. This is the entirety of her vice presidency. She never really stepped out. She did almost no interviews. Now, I'm a journalist, so maybe I'm a little bit centered on that question, but it's like, get out there and talk to people. And when you're interviewing, when Tam Edwards is interviewing, you're not just talking to a journalist or an anchor, you're talking to everybody that's watching too. I mean, this is, get out there and engage and show you can handle, tough questions, offbeat questions, show you can interact. And she didn't do any of that. Part of it was the Biden people do what a president does to almost every vice president, which is keeps her back. But she didn't even really try to push the envelope on it.
Though maybe she worried she'd be seen as, get a harder time as a woman who was ambitious. But it was interesting that she knew, when I interviewed her here 3 years ago, I knew this was going to be an issue, that they never quite got in front of it.
And when you interviewed her 3 years ago, what were the constraints around that interview? Like, how much time did you have? And what was the...
Minutes, but she...
It's always
Yeah, but she knew we were going back into pandemic protocol. People, the inflation numbers were terrible.
Yeah.
Her press secretary said, what are you going to ask? I'm like, do you have a newspaper? Look at the headlines. So she saw me coming.
Yeah.
So I was surprised she wasn't more ready for me than she was. You mentioned something personal in the book in talking about Butler.
Yeah.
And you talk about Cory Comparator and what he was like. And it's a quick line, but I thought it might lend some insight.
Yeah.
Your father's a volunteer firefighter and a Trump supporter.
Yep.
And I think often when you talk to people, we're so divided trying to understand each other. And you've spent so much time watching Donald Trump and Joe Biden. Obviously, you've spent a lot of time with your dad. Your understanding, you might look at it and see one thing, but do you understand how and why we're here when it comes to somebody like your dad?
So my dad, who died in 2017, was a firefighter, guy who ran an auto body shop, owned a boat, he was Kiwanis Club guy. He was, he had served in the Naval Reserves. And when I was looking into Cory Comparator, who got killed in Butler, and reading his bio, my dad loved cars, collected American sports cars, fixed them up, and all of these things were true of Cory. I was like, I'm like reading about my dad, and then reading and then listening to his family after to talk about him and what he was like. And just a really, look, my dad wasn't a big political guy at all. I guess in later years he started watching a lot of Fox News, and it certainly changed kind of his viewpoints and made him a little bit more intensely political. He always loved my work, everything, all of it, and was my biggest supporter in the world. But more like this guy Cory Comparator, he was a guy that wanted to help people. I mean, the psychology of the volunteer firefighter. My dad, it was like we had the scanner on all the time in the house. He wanted to be the first one there when something was going bad to try to help people. It gave him meaning to his life. And I think there are a lot of people, like that, good, a lot of them blue collar, as patriotic as can be. My dad freaking loved his flag more than anything. Memorial Day parades, 4th of July parades. He always, in his uniform, out there, wanted to be part of it. He moved to Florida and lived in a little kind of development and went to put up a flagpole, and they told him that the flagpoles weren't permitted. And he literally sold his house to move to a different, so he could have his flagpole. And now Trump's got the big freaking flagpole. So this is what really attracted him, I think, was the kind of the appeal to patriotism and the flag and all of that. So yeah, I think that helps me understand
It was how he made people
Yeah.
feel.
Yeah, yeah.
What does Donald Trump care about? And I want to put this in context. How many times have you heard him say, I don't know anything about that? Like it just sort of feels like other people are doing whatever. You know, he cares about tariffs a little. He cares about immigration a little. But he's not as emotionally tied as
Yeah.
many people in his administration to whatever Stephen Miller is doing, or Russell Vogt. They're true, or J.D. Vance. And you wonder, what really drives him? What does he really care about? Is there anything? Somebody said himself.
I mean,
But, I mean, yourself.
you can kind of take the question two ways. So yes, I mean, he cares about being the center of attention and being praised by everybody. If you ever hear him say, you know, I get credit or I don't get credit, that's what matters to him more than anything. Or people like lauding him for, I mean, he mentioned, today they had a cabinet meeting, I don't know if you saw it, but I mean, he mentioned the Nobel Peace Prize thing like 4 times, you know, still. Like, how many wars do I have to end before they give it to me, you know? So yes, being the center of attention and being lauded as the biggest and the greatest and all of that, yes, okay. But in terms of the policy,
I mean, he's talked about tariffs for years,
yeah.
immigration for years, but even then, sometimes you're not sure. Like,
Yeah.
does he really care?
It was interesting hearing him talk about this, about the second strike on the boat, on the alleged drug boat in the Caribbean. And suddenly that was, well, you know, Pete, you know, I mean, you know, Pete did the right thing, you know. I didn't really know much about it, you know, Pete told me, you know, but he does really believe and care about tariffs. And he has this belief, somebody told him somewhere along the line that, you know, when McKinley was president, you know, tariffs were the primary revenue source. I mean, it's before we had an income tax, so yes. But he loves McKinley. I mean, I don't think, you know, I mean, that's kind of a deep cut for Donald Trump. But he really believes, I mean, if you go back to where he was in the 80s when he first started doing this stuff, you know, he was all into the Japanese and they're ripping us off. And this is the time when the Japanese cars were flooding the market, when the Japanese bought Pebble Beach and Rockefeller Center and all of that. And it was like, we need tariffs, we need barriers, we need America. So that is core to his being. And that's why I think the most important thing coming up, possibly next month, we don't know exactly, but it's what the Supreme Court decides on the tariffs. I'm not a lawyer, but from my read of this case, it seems, and I listened to every minute of the debate before the Supreme Court, and I've been following it on its way to the Supreme Court. There is a very good chance that the Supreme Court says that the tariffs that he's done, not all of them, but the vast majority of them, the so-called reciprocal tariffs, are unconstitutional. I mean, he has no authority to do that. I mean, think about it. Every major trade deal, because you and I have covered like a lot of major debates over trade, NAFTA, the U.S.-Mexico free trade agreement that Trump negotiated, TPP, the Pacific, which ended up getting voted down. Each one of those had to go to Congress. 2 of them passed, 1 of them didn't, and it went away because it didn't pass. So now Trump's negotiating trade deals with all these countries, and he's unilaterally throwing, and he's not getting any authority from Congress? Come on. So I don't know. Again, I'm not a lawyer, but if that, and he's clearly, I think, seeing some of the same things that I'm hearing, and he's obviously very worried. He's calling this the most important Supreme Court case in the history of mankind.
Not the one that gave him pretty much unlimited immunity.
Yeah, maybe even more important than that one. But maybe he has immunity to ignore it if, that'd be an interesting question. Can you ignore one but not the other? Yeah.
You have said, as you've been talking about this book, you don't think he's running for a 3rd term, which is the bête noire of a lot of people, that you think it's his way of staying relevant, because the minute you say you're not, you're a lame duck. Wondering about what you're seeing in Washington from Republicans who, for the most part, can say anything they want behind closed doors, but nobody's trying to get that smoke from him. But November came, and we saw what happened in New Jersey and in Virginia, and now tonight is Tennessee.
Yeah.
A
Do
race
we have
that's
results yet? Do you have any, Matt? You got it?
I don't know.
Okay.
A race that is much closer in deep red Tennessee, which has
Yeah.
started alarm bells, and certainly if they lose, if a Democrat wins, what does he do and what do Republicans do? If indeed it seems as though the public is independents pulling away.
Well, you have a little bit of a roadmap on this because Republicans got beat up really badly in 2018 in his midterms, in his first term. And you recall he didn't moderate it at all. And then he lost in 2020, you remember. Mm-hmm. That didn't really cause
I don't think he remembers that.
Yeah. I don't know if that caused a sudden, jolt of humility and we have to change how we are. So I think he'll lash out and blame people. Maybe even a few people on his staff. By the way, the Tennessee race, we'll know soon, but the Republicans seemed a lot more confident they were going to win. But so let's assume they win in Tennessee, and maybe it's already, if somebody knows, let me know. But remember that Trump won that district by 22 points. So if they're winning it by, and the Democratic candidate is a very liberal, very progressive candidate that is, by all, it would be a tough one to win in this district. I think nominated at the time when Democrats didn't really think they had, any chance. But if a Democrat wins, if the Republicans win by less than 10 points, that's just a massive warning sign, red flag. As were the races in New Jersey and in Virginia, even in New York. So look, California on the redistricting. How does he act, though? And how does he look? He's going to be if they lose the midterms and he's facing a Democratic Congress, and suddenly to get anything done, literally to keep the lights on in the government. Now you absolutely need Democrats, not just in the Senate, but in the House. I think we're in for some. I think it's uncharted territory.
A question I asked you today on the air, which more than anything, he seems to pride himself at having a soul-deep understanding of the electorate, where his people are, where other people are. And I wrote some things down, the split screen.
Yeah.
There's the Qatari jet, the ballroom, the family business deals, the Epstein files, the contradictions. We don't like a drug-running country, but we're going to give a pardon to its drug-running leader. The tariff pinch, the immigration raids. People thought they were getting MS-13, not college students. And yet, he seems to hold on to his base, kinda. We saw some break with the Epstein files. Are we in a moment where he is still in the grip of his people? Or do you feel things swirling underneath there? It's a question you and I have asked each other, that everybody asks you. Does he manage to hold on that grip for the next 3 years, or do you feel something different that he's going to have to deal with?
There's going to be a significant part of the country that is going to love him no matter what the hell happens. This is the shoot him on Fifth Avenue. If I shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue, they're still going to love me. That crowd is going to be there. But it's not the full MAGA base. And I think we are seeing some significant. When Marjorie Taylor Greene, is so shaken by what she's seeing that she not only is not running for re-election, but she's resigning in the beginning of January. And actually not really even talking about it much right now. I've talked to people who know her very well, who, say that she's really hurt by what's happened here. Feels like betrayed by Trump. Not personally, yes, personally, but more than personally, like the ideas, what he promised to do. I don't think that's a one-off. This isn't like a moderate Republican who leaves because they have no more support among the base. If you look at what Marjorie Taylor Greene was saying, and even what she said in her announcement, people like Steve Bannon were praising her. And she's saying really, it's a real challenge. Does Trump really believe in what he promised he was going to do?
I want to talk a little
Or
bit.
does he want to build a frickin' ballroom and while people's health insurance is skyrocketing and while inflation is not, Trump has been telling us that our Thanksgiving dinner was 25% cheaper this year. I mean, it wasn't. You know, so you know, and I would also add the Gatsby party at Mar-a-Lago. I mean, I think some of this stuff starts to like cause some of those hardcore supporters to wonder. Again, a lot of them are still going to be there no matter what.
Wanted to ask a little bit about the other side of the aisle with the Democrats, because you're in Washington
Yep.
and you're hearing, and you watch what they did in Retribution running up to
Yeah.
it, and a lot of it seems to be an inability to have tough, honest conversations among themselves and to pick a direction.
Yeah.
Is that changing? Are they willing to have certain conversations? Are they figuring anything out? Or it's the same, well, it's your turn, be nice about it. Are they going to say, well, he did it, so we're going to do it? Like, where's your sense of where they're going?
You asked me a question which I didn't answer before, which was effectively, is he just lucky or is he just really good? I mean, how did he do this? I think that part of the answer to that is he's been gifted by his opposition. You know, the Democrats have been ineffective and still haven't figured out how really to take him on. And I think there is more unity among Democrats right now than there has been for a long, long time. Unity on, and there are obviously some very high-profile division, but unity on how to take him on in terms of we're going to remind people that he is not, you know, that he came in promising, you know, to cut inflation, and you know most Americans are having a hard time affording, or not most, but a big chunk of our country is having a hard time paying rent, buying groceries, taking care of their family. And what has he accomplished on that? So they could the critique. The Democrats will be very good on the critique, and then the lawlessness and that part of the equation. One, the kind of bread and butter economic issues, and two, you know, Trump as a threat to democracy, which is still a big part of the Democratic message. But what Democrats will do if they regain power, I don't think they're any closer on a unified agenda there at all.
Do you think that Kamala will run again, or is there somebody else that you're watching?
I do think that she is gearing up to run again, and I think she'll have a hard time. I think there will be no deference.
Can a couple of you call out why you groaned? I honestly want to know why. She had 107 days. What did you not like?
We learned with Hillary, we learned that this country's not ready for a woman president.
Not ready for a woman? Anybody else? She doesn't stand for anything? Not a-
The party didn't have an open convention where she could have legitimately gathered, circled the wagons with the party. And a lot of folks that I spoke to make mention that a lot of folks were left
Right.
out of the process.
It's interesting to me, are Democrats looking for a Democratic Trump? Like the same thing, but just as a Democrat? Or are they looking for something different? The surprise, like Obama was a surprise when he came along.
Look, I think it's going to be a very interesting primary, to say the least. And the risk is that the Democrats will have 20 or 25 candidates. And when the debate comes here to Pennsylvania, Tam's going to be moderating, and it's going to be like 3 nights because you can't get him. Or you're going to have like balcony seating for the debate stage. But I think there's really interesting debates going on among Democrats right now. I went out and spent time with Gavin Newsom. Did a long interview with him. Check it out, please, because it was really interesting. And he's a much more complicated and I think I found it very interesting, and it was not what I expected. And I've been covering Gavin Newsom for a while. Rahm Emanuel is going around the country right now. I think he's probably going to run. He's going to do something very interesting. He's going to Alabama because there's been a success in education where the state has gone from being one of the absolute lowest in testing to being significantly higher. And he's focusing on education and what is working in education. And he wants to go not just to places that Democrats usually go. That'll be an interesting conversation. You know, the biggest crowds and the most energy have been Bernie Sanders doing his, and the oligarchy tour. I went out with him to Colorado. I was stunned because I interviewed him right after, and he told me that it was the biggest crowd that he had ever spoken to. And think about the huge crowds that Bernie Sanders had in 2016 and again in 2020. And I checked it out, and he was right. But I spoke to a lot of the people that came out in Colorado and Denver, and they weren't all, a lot of them were not Bernie Sanders voters. They were there because they wanted to show some way to demonstrate opposition to Trump. But that's where a lot of the energy is there. And Mamdani, who, look, the victory by any measure was greater for Mikey Sherrill and for Abigail Spanberger. Won by bigger margins, et cetera. They're both moderate Democrats, but there was an energy and excitement for Mamdani. This is going to be a fascinating debate if there aren't 25 people,
I think
speaking
you'll be
for
back to
45
talk to me
seconds at
about
a
your
time.
next book.
Yeah.
You point out something Trump does in the book, and he does it to you as well. He can curse you out in 1 minute.
Yeah.
And then act like nothing. It's like wrestling. Okay, we're going to do this and then this. And then they try to kill each other.
Yeah. He is a WWE guy, totally, by the way.
He's done
He's
it
in the
to you?
WWE Hall of Fame. I mean, he's not only president of the United States, he's a Hall of Famer.
Nobels, Hall of Famers.
Yeah.
So he does it to Biden. He does it to you. This happens all the time. And it's something that I have not seen in many people, that if I speak to you a certain way, I'm assuming that you and I are not friends.
Yeah.
He does it, and he assumes it's fine to call you up and talk
Yeah.
about the weather the next
Yeah.
day, like an hour later.
Yeah.
Can you explain what is going on there? That is highly unusual.
I mean, part of it is the WWE phenomenon. So there was a wild moment in Cleveland in 2016 at the convention where Ted Cruz is giving, one of the big speeches. And Ted Cruz has not endorsed Trump yet. And as he's giving his speech, it's becoming clear that he's not going to endorse Trump, even as he's speaking at Trump's convention. And the crowd is starting to turn on him. And Trump, who is not in the arena, or not he's backstage, walks out slowly as the crowd is taunting and jeering Ted Cruz, and just slowly walks in, knowing that the cameras are going to show him walking in as Cruz is not endorsing him. And the crowd got so riled up at Ted Cruz, in part because of Trump walking in as he did, that he had to rush out of the arena. They got chased into an elevator. Like Ted Cruz's wife was in danger at one. I mean, this was really bad. And now he's buddies with Ted Cruz again. Not just accusing his father of being part of the Kennedy assassination and saying his wife was ugly, but he's got Ted Cruz on board, and he's very nice to Ted Cruz when he sees him. But he doesn't cling to that. He can be as hateful and harsh on you as you can possibly imagine. But if you're going to give him a little bit, he'll be, it didn't really matter. It was part of the show. The biggest indication of this is Joe Biden. And because you hear the stuff he has said, it is saying about Joe Biden. I mean, it's brutal. And by the way, this is not in any way normal. We've never had presidents beat the crap out of the previous president. I mean, that just doesn't happen. I mean, and we've had bitter rivalries, and it just doesn't happen. And but I document, because I spent a great deal of time reporting on it, every interaction that Trump had with Biden last year, and there were a number of them, beginning with a phone call that they had the night of the Butler shooting, to right after the election, to when Biden invited Trump to visit the White House right after the election, to January 20th. They had several in it. And I'm telling you, multiple sources, I talked to people that overheard the conversations. Trump was as obsequious as you could possibly be. Joe, man, it's great to see you, and keep in touch. Let me know if I can do anything for you. That's the last thing he said to him. As Biden's getting off on the helicopter, and then Trump's going back into the Capitol to, to slam him again. Trump's saying, let me know, keep in touch. Let me know what I can do for you.
I think you're right. In 100 years, we'll be reading your book to go, what was that? Pardons. In the book, you go through Joe Biden's decision on why he gave them to members of his family, including his son Hunter, some officials, the fear that you were right in naming the book Retribution. What would happen if he didn't? Now we see what Donald Trump is doing with pardons. And I was listening, again, to Pod Save America, and one of the hosts said they could literally see him pardoning his entire administration prophylactically on his last day in office. What would that, like something that used to be rare and argued about? Remember when people gave Clinton a hard time about giving Denise Rich's husband one? It was a really thing people battled over. What happens if you start giving them out like Pez? What happens if we lose this thing having its meaning? And are we there?
I mean, it's almost like the pardon power was something that Trump wasn't fully aware of for most of his first term. And then as he's getting ready to leave, he's like, oh, wow, this is pretty cool. He had other things on his mind, January 6th and all that, but he did a bunch of them at the end. And now he comes back, and actually I said something in my last book. I said if Trump returns, like basically January 2021 is not the end, it's the beginning. The way he was January 6th and all that, and the pardons. He's realized that the pardon power is the one power that a president has that is entirely unchecked. I mean, it's right there in the Constitution. It's enumerated. There are no clauses to debate of how wide and far it is. He can do whatever the hell he wants. And it's already, the president of Honduras, who he just pardoned, and someday, and maybe this will be some final book, but we're going to need to figure out why these pardons are happening, because some of them don't really make a lot of sense. This guy was sentenced to 45 years. He had taken payments from El Chapo. He was investigated by Emil Bovy. You know who he is? He was the guy leading that case out of the Southern District of New York. It was the indictment and the conviction came under Biden, but the case was years in the working, and it was under not Biden. So what was that all about? So I think it's going to be a lot. I know that it's like open season, people who want pardons. Look, they were really trying. There was a guy at the end of the first term who paid Matt Schlapp, the guy that ran, does he still run CPAC? Yeah. CPAC. No, not Newsmax, CPAC. Paid him $400,000 to advocate for a pardon. And the guy didn't get a pardon. But Matt got us $400,000. But it's like people are lining up. Who do I talk to? How do I get in? What do I do? And will he pardon everybody in his administration? I don't know. There was talk of, people were proposing that at the end of 2021. At the end of his, end of 2020, beginning, before he left in 2021, and he didn't do it. So I don't know.
Jamie Dimon said something interesting in an interview recently, that he didn't give money to the ballroom because he's worried there could be corruption investigations one day.
Yeah.
They won't reach Trump, but they will reach other people.
There will be corruption investigations. There will be a lot of them.
Will they go anywhere if you have a pardon? You'll get out of the federal unless they can figure out state.
first of all, Congress is going to have oversight and accountability on all of this. So you're going to, and then the Demo, yeah, that's funny, right? I had the Speaker of the House on this week, our Sunday show on ABC, in the midst of the shutdown. And the thing I didn't understand about the shutdown, I mean, I did, but the thing I didn't, the thing that I was trying to understand was why the House of Representatives was out of session. Because in every other shutdown, Congress is in session because they're trying to come to a solution. They're doing, you know, how's the shutdown being done? There's oversight on that. The Senate was in session, so why wasn't the House in session? And I was asking the Speaker of the House, and one of the examples, I came to him, like, don't you guys have oversight to do? It's like, for instance, don't you have any questions about the bombing of these boats in the Caribbean? I mean, don't you want to have hearings and like that, what they're doing and who they're targeting? And he's like, they're going after, you know, narco-terrorists. I mean, there was no sense that there was like oversight to do. But look, Democrats, when they do retake power, because they will eventually retake power, the question is, how much time are they going to spend getting accountability and investigating all this stuff, and how much time are they going to spend on their own proactive, positive agenda? And it's not an easy question for them.
I've got one last question. Do you mind going just a little bit long and taking a couple from the crowd? We're having fun. It's the question that I'm sure that you get, that I get all the time. People will say, are we going to be all right?
Yeah.
And a version of that is, are we going to somehow in 3 years go back to normal, whether it's a Republican or a Democrat? This is going to go back to something that looks familiar to me. Thoughts?
So I think we're going to be fine. I'm an optimist, but my optimism has been challenged over the past several years. I write something in the conclusion of this book, and I think the conclusion of this book is, I mean, don't jump to it, but I think that's like, you know, I mean, it was a very tough thing to write, and it was very kind of emotional to write. But one thing I say, which could very easily be taken out of context, and I don't remember my exact words, but I say that I have always thought that the idea that Donald Trump, you know, is this guy that's going to be a fascist dictator, that those fears are overblown. So you could just take that out of context and say, look, oh, this guy thinks Trump's okay. But this is what I write. I think that those fears are overblown. But I believe that he has provided a roadmap for how it can be done. And that, I mean, our institutions have been really, really challenged. And what do we do when people in positions of power and responsibility flout the law, act profoundly irresponsible? What do we do? J.D. Vance quoted a quote that may or may not have been said by President Andrew Jackson, you know, about Justice Marshall. Justice Marshall has made his ruling. Now let him send his army to enforce it. What do? We confronted this in one instance with the Mike Pence episode, because we all knew that Mike Pence knew that he did not have the authority under the Constitution to single-handedly decide an election. I mean, it's just freaking obvious, right? But what if he did? What if he tried to do it? Who would stop him? And there's no good answer to that question.
We'll be having alcohol with them. We're going to do, I'm getting the hook, so we're going to do a couple of quick lightning round questions. Maybe just a couple. I see a hand right there. Yeah.
We'll go.
Wait,
Yeah.
she's bringing the mic. There you go.
Jonathan, you seemed optimistic that he won't run for a third term.
Mm-hmm.
And you were just alluding to it. I mean, Trump might be dead in 2 or 3 years, but will Trumpism be dead in 2 or 3 years? And that's my personal fear, the incivility in our country right now, whether it's road rage or flouting the law in Washington.
Yeah.
What's your thought on where the country will be in 5 or 8 years?
I mean, that's the far bigger challenge than anything that Trump is doing. It's what's happened to the country, and the divide in this country. And I think that I would also add the war on truth. And if people can't agree that we're going to, in our debates, stick to facts, and we have an agreement on what those facts are, I mean, we're in real trouble. What I'm hopeful as an optimist is that there's a pendulum swing, because look, the hate and the bitterness and the divide is people will, oh, you're saying both sides, but it is both sides, okay? I mean, we're a deeply divided country, and we don't talk to each other, and my hope is that living through this experience will, my God, like I said, people will have to read my book to find out what that'll happen, because we figured it out and we got onto a more normal path where we don't talk about our political opponents as evil and as the enemy and as the people that are destroying our country. Because, by the way, that was something that was said by both sides in this last campaign.
Young people make me hopeful. I hear that they believe in a
Yes.
purpose-driven life and they'd like to do this differently.
This gentleman was
Okay, sure.
about. I'm sorry.
Thank you. Can you explain the Trump-Putin relationship from your perspective?
No. Next question. Sorry. Look. Trump likes people that project strength, and I think he sees Putin as kind of an ultimate strongman. I think it's kind of as simple as that. Whether or not, I mean, there's a lot of other theories, but I'll leave others to.
Is Trump and Hedgecraft destroying the military and making it less the obstacle to your transition to a fascist leader?
Yeah, so that last chapter begins with a description of a speech that Trump gave earlier this year at Fort Bragg in North Carolina, which you may remember, which turned into a political rally and had troops kind of cheering and jeering along as he attacked Democrats. And they were selling Trump merchandise on a military base. I mean, our military's got to be nonpartisan. The hopeful thing about that was the reaction to it, which is it was condemned by some quietly, but a lot. It was not something that the military was proud of at all. And when Pete Hegseth summoned all the generals to come to Quantico, you noticed they didn't play political props. They just sat there and they were called back. They did their duty. They didn't cheer. But last chapter talks about that.
There's a lady right there.
Hi, why did you choose that cover for your, that photograph for your cover? And what do you think actually happened at Butler?
So one of my daughters was like, "Dad, you cannot put that picture on the cover." And judging from the reaction of some people, they probably agree with my daughter. I thought it was a defining image of the campaign. I think kind of, that experience, and I'll get to your second question about what happened at Butler, but became so much part of the Retribution campaign. They tried to kill him. Now he's really going to, so I didn't choose it to glorify Trump. I chose it because I thought that was the defining image of the campaign. What do I think really happened at Butler? I'm going to disappoint you, and I'm going to say that they tried to kill him at Butler. It wasn't staged. I mentioned Corey Comparator, the guy's dead. 2 other people that were there were gravely wounded. My friend took that picture. He's an AP photographer. Another friend of mine named Doug Mills, who's a New York Times reporter, took another famous shot, which is where you see the bullet, you know, in freeze frame. You know, did the bullet hit his ear, or did something else hit his ear? I don't know. Did we get a full rundown from the doctors? No. Who knows? But the idea that it was a staged event is just not true.
So John, I think we've come to time because you're going to sign some books out
Okay.
there. We could stay here all night. I love talking to you. We've had
It's
a
really
great
good. Thank you.
time.
By the way, I
Thank you
love.
for coming out.
Thank you. And I just want to say, I love the free library. This is the third event that I have done with my friend, Tamala Edwards, who is a truly great journalist who I've known for a long time. So thank you.